Welcome to Good Goodbyes, the Funeral Facts podcast. We are really glad you found us. In this podcast, me, Simon, a funeral director,
And me, Tina, I'm an independent celebrant.
are going to discuss all things funeral in an informal space to demystify what happens when we say goodbye.
Based on your questions and queries, Si and myself are two industry professionals that are going to chat through the hows, whats, and wherefores. We actively work in the funeral industry in Devon in the UK. So, we hope you enjoy the episode ahead. Welcome to Good Goodbyes. Hello, welcome to Good Goodbyes, the funeral podcast. I'm Tina.
And I'm Si. Welcome to you all. Today, we're going to talk about orders of service. The little folded bits of card that you have in your hand that tell you what's going on, who's who, the pretty pictures and all that sort of stuff. But how much more can go into them these days? Because, they're becoming a much bigger part of the funeral service.
And what kind of questions do people tend to ask you about orders of service then, Si?
So it's a funny one. A lot of people ask or assume they have to have them, and kind of feel a bit compelled, and will have the conversation with me saying, right, okay, well, which order of service do I have to have? Okay, you don't have to have any. Um, I'm a I'm a bit of a believer. If you're having hymns, have an order of service. Much easier to have all the words written down in front of you. Um, but yeah, that's probably the biggest one. People feel really like we absolutely have to have it, and you don't. You really don't. I think they're a great thing
Mm,
because people that can't attend can have them and feel a
mm.
part of it. People that do attend, especially close family, and you hear it all the time at weddings, but it is the case with funerals. The day might just kind of pass you by a little bit. So having something to look back on is not a bad thing either. What are your
Yeah.
views on them?
Well, similar really to yours. I have seen somebody who didn't have one at all, but what they did was projected the order of events upon a screen, and then there was a song everyone sang, and they projected the lyrics. But as we were leaving that service and I'm outside mingling with folk, one lady was going, well, I've nothing to take away. I was going to show it to Mary. Mary couldn't make the day. And and I kind of thought, yeah, that's kind of what's missing, really.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit with you on that. And I have seen, as we've mentioned in a previous podcast, people always collect them and ring things that they might like for their own event.
Yeah.
So they kind of can be a useful resource. So yeah, but they don't have to be expensive. I've seen people at a recent event I officiated, it was the young people who were the teenagers who created it, the order of service on using PowerPoint and something called Canva. So they did a bit of a
Yeah.
DIY job on it, which obviously meant that they felt part of it all. So that's possible. You can do a bit of a DIY on it, but there are lots of other ways that a funeral director can help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I use Canva. So if we're doing something kind of small, because I am in no way a graphic designer,
Mm.
but Canva's a great tool. If we're doing something small, if a family just want a kind of a single side of A4 or something like that, so there's something in hand, then absolutely I can support with that. But otherwise, we use a graphic designer and printer. We send the back and forth. We speak with the celebrant, make sure the content's right, and all that sort of stuff. But you can go into huge depths with it. You can go into really sort of the content that you have in there. People kind of say, "Oh, we've got a photo for the front. Okay, but do you want any other photos? I didn't know I could have it. You can have as many as you want." And for some companies, they will allow you a certain amount and then charge you for more. Some printers will just print what you want because color printing is color printing. It doesn't really matter. Um, and then it's the content itself, isn't it? Like, how much do you want in there? How the words of the poems. It's quite nice to hear it, but it's quite nice to read it as you hear it as well to get some context, and kind of really get a feeling of what that reading means.
Because we all understand the world in different ways. And some of us, our primary way of enjoying the world is through listening, but others it's visual. So if you give those both of those options, it makes people understand the words more. So actually, yeah, it is great to have them written down as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that the church are particularly good at is when a minister delivers a reading, um, John 16 verse 4, whatever it might be, they didn't recap it. They go back and they sort of say, and what I've got from that, or what that is telling us. I think when you've got something written in an order of service, you can do that yourself. You've heard it, but then you can really examine it and see why it's appropriate. Um, because a lot of the time people sort of think, oh, well, I'm having readings for the sake of readings, but those readings mean something. And if you've got it written down in front of you, you realize what they mean.
That's such a good point because often the people have chosen those words and they've really thought about it. You know, they've looked at lots of options and they've landed on that particular prose or poem because it has real meaning for them, or it's trying to say something they feel they can't say themselves in their own words. So I think you've landed on a really good point that, you know, you're you're hearing or reading something that has great meaning for the family or for the person who died.
Yeah, and being able to revisit that is especially kind of helpful. I know that I need to read things a couple of times before I really understand it. And yeah, sometimes you reflect, and even in
Yeah.
a different light, even later in the day or whatever it might be, you can look back at those words and they'll mean something different to you. You'll
Yeah.
understand it differently.
And the
Uh,
people, sorry, Si, and the people in the room, it can help them if you say it, you know, if it's noted who's doing the speaking. And I've certainly been at events myself where the ladies in front of me were talking and somebody stood up to speak. I think it was a family friend, and they were going, "Who's that? Who's that?" And so,
yeah,
of course, in the program, in the order of service, it said Martin, a friend of the family. And so
mm,
they knew who was speaking. So that
yeah,
kind of is helpful too, because everyone at a funeral doesn't know everyone else.
yeah, very true, very true. Um, from a guiding point of view, and from that order kind of word, I think it's a good thing to have for kind of letting people know what's next, letting know people what to expect, and kind of have an idea of what the service is going to look like, as well as those images and being able to kind of have something in your hand to remind you. It gives you a bit of a guidance as to what they're going to be doing, because it can be an odd environment to sit in and just sort of think, right, okay, what we doing? So I think that's a help. And one thing we always do, and I know a lot of other funeral directors do, if there's a wake afterwards, we put the address on there. If there's donations, we put mention the donations on there. Just some of the things that you kind of might be aware of that are going on, but don't want to ask.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's nothing quite like kind of walking out of the room and thinking, "Am I welcome at the wake? Where
Mm,
is it? What's going on?"
yeah.
If it's on there, then it's an invitation in itself.
Yeah. And you know, absolutely. And you know, are there charities being supported? Where do I make my donation? You know, you often get those questions outside, especially because people don't want to trouble the family in that moment. And also who's officiating, you know, the minister or the celebrant or family member even, you know, if there's an officiant, it's quite good to know who they are. You know, you may or may not want to see them again in the future of your life. So, you know, you've got an idea of who conducted that ceremony and whether, you know, you thought it was good. So,
Yeah,
yeah, so
that's
there's a
probably
number
the
of reasons they can be useful.
yeah, that's probably the most circled thing, which we've mentioned before, is who took the service. Because if you go to a service and you like the person that's taken it, and you think, oh, that's who I'd like, or I need to remember them, that's a perfect opportunity to put a big ring around it. Um, because I mean, you mention who you are at the very start of the service. That's it. Um,
Yeah,
it's maybe the only interaction any member of the congregation has ever had with you. So
yeah.
yeah, being able to put a ring around that is certainly helpful. I always make sure your name's on the front, Tina.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. But you know, it is kind of interesting actually because you know, people just don't remember half of what they've heard at a service. They come, you know, there's this saying, isn't there? People won't remember what you said, but people will remember how you made them feel. And I think that's kind of a big thing out of a service or oh, the services of a particular funeral director. So people will go, I want that team because they made me feel good. And then it's remembering who that team were for the
Yeah,
future. Yeah.
yeah,
So orders of
that's
service, they do lots of functions for people.
yeah. They're far more than just a bit of paper in your hand, and I think
Yeah.
it's from a funeral director's point of view, and trying to explain that to families can be a little bit difficult because yes, it's a cost, um, but the benefits I think outweigh that cost. What they do, um, as just a folded bit of card,
Mm.
is quite a lot actually.
Yeah, yeah, they do. It does serve a lot of functions, and there's traditional things that you could have in it, like you might have a section called committal, welcome. The order of your service is really completely up to you, and all sorts of things can happen. But there's a kind of a logic to it, and you would be guided by the officiants and the funeral directors who are looking after you as to what might be a nice logical layout for you, because that's often what people want a bit of help with.
Yeah, and like you said, some families want to do them themselves.
Mm.
They want to take ownership of that and kind of create something like that. But there is the other end of the scale that really just want you and I to collaborate and get it done and produce it, and both is fine.
Yeah,
There is no right or wrong. It is as simple as uh, we are here to support you however you need us to support you. And if that's doing the order of service in its entirety, then that's what we'll do. If that's just giving you the tools to do it yourself, then that's what we'll do as well.
yeah, perfect. And you can use whatever language you want. That's the last thing I was going to mention. So that we call them orders of service because that's kind of our industry language for them. But you can call them anything you want, like celebration of Fred's life, anything. You can give it whatever name you want, and you can use pretty much whatever language within it that you want. But that's kind of our shorthand for them. We call them orders of service. Thank you. Anything, Si, you want to add?
No, I think that's it. I think it's turned into a nice bite-sized episode just to let you know those words that you hear and what it actually means and some of the meanings beyond what you think it means as well.
Perfect. And we will see you again very soon. Take care of one another.
Bye bye. You've been listening to Good Goodbyes, the Funeral Facts podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment, and share. Drop any questions on our social media, on Instagram, or in the text option in the show notes.
Si and I are qualified professionals, but we always advise our clients to seek any additional support from medical practitioners if they need to. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay well and be kind to one another.
You've been listening to Good Goodbyes, the Funeral Facts podcast. Please do like, subscribe, comment and share. Drop any questions on our social media, on Instagram, or in the text option in the show notes.
Si and I are qualified professionals, but we always advise our clients to seek any additional support from medical practitioners if they need to. And we hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay well and be kind to one another.